There's about 8 or 9 people to add to that. Please be aware that anyone who wishes to address the committee should direct their comments and questions through the chair. Once all comments have been received, report 2023-79 KP Trail request to extend ATV access on the KP Trail will be on the floor for consideration. Any recommendations by the committee will then be forwarded to County Council at a future meeting. So the decision today is a recommendation to County Council. Please note there are sign-up sheets at the desk by the front door. We've already done that. I also would ask people, this is a very hot topic. I would ask you to respect each other, to listen to the comments, to not make comments from your seat, and we will get through this meeting in a respectful manner. As chair, if that's not the case, we'll have to stop the meeting and restart when we can get things under control. So we're going to start with our first person, which is John Abrams, and I understand John's representing the Harrison Village. Welcome, John.
Good morning, councillors. My name is John Abrams.
Turn on your mic.
Oh, can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay. You think I know?
Think it's on.
Check. Yeah.
There we go.
Might be a little on the quiet side. I'm not sure.
And just to add, you'll have 10 minutes.
Okay. If you'll grant me an indulgence, I wasn't given a time to speak, but I did base my presentation time on the last county council meeting and the presentations that were made that day. So it's just around 20. If I might be able to do that from some of the speakers that are coming after, I will be succinct, I promise.
I'm sorry, but we can't allow 20 minutes.
Okay, well, we'll see how far we get. And,
Okay. Get the highlights first.
So I'm a resident of Harrowsmith. I'm a country musician. That's my main career. My brother and I, we actually have a show in Belleville this evening. So my apologies, I'll have to get out early, but thank you for your time. But more important than my career, I'm a husband and a new father to a baby girl as of 3 months ago. I grew up on our family farm in Joyceville, but my brother, my cousin and I spent every summer living out on Rutledge Road with our grandparents. My wife and I moved into the Harrowsmith Village from Kingston in the summer of 2019. But we did so because of this area's really special significance to both our families. I'm very proud to say that I'm the 8th generation of Abrams here in this county. Most of my extended Abrams family have lived in the Verona area since at least the early 1800s. This is and always will be our home. So when people ask me if I'm from the area, I say, look, I'm related to most of the folks on Desert Lake, and the whole graveyard is filled with Abrams tombstones. So that probably tells you the answer. And like many of my friends from this area, I grew up riding ATVs through all these local fields. We definitely got into our fair share of trouble at our uncle's crop. And my family and I still own ATVs, side-by-sides, bikes, and we ride them at our family farm. We also take them back north with friends on weekends in the summer. So I want to open my address today by acknowledging that ATV riding is not only an important part of my own upbringing, but I want to also recognize that riding ATVs is a special part of rural Ontarian identity. We have an incredible province to explore, and ATV riding is one great way to do that. I also mean it when I say local ATV clubs like the Verona District ATV Club are not just groups filled with riding partners. They're a fundamentally important community of good, hardworking people spending time together in a world where it's easy to feel isolated, especially after the pandemic. So I say this today to ensure that nobody misunderstands me. My submissions to the committee are not anti-ATV, and they're certainly, most certainly, not anti-ATV club. In fact, before I say anything further, I want to thank our local ATV club for the work that they do for the community. The point of my address today is to recognize that while I am a rider myself, there have always been safe ways to ride and unsafe ways to ride. It is also a given that there are safe places to ride and unsafe places to ride. There are places that can be designated for riding and places that ought not to be designated for riding. Since moving to Harrowsmith in 2019, my wife and I have walked our dogs on the KMP Trail outside the village of Harrowsmith. We now walk our daughter in her stroller. In the summertime, after the winter months have waned and the snowmobile season is over, the trails are a saving grace for us to get out and walk. One of the drawbacks about living right in Harrowsmith Village, admittedly, is the traffic and the speed at which people drive on Highway 38. Also, Holbrook Road and Rutledge Road, unlike when I was young, are now unsafe for walking. They have very little shoulder and cars often pass very quickly. The trails are a safe haven in the summertime for us to get the exercise we need. And we certainly aren't alone. We run into our village neighbors every day on the trail. Countless dog walkers, cyclists, horseback riders, retirees, kids use the trails in the summertime in and around Harrowsmith and north at least to Petworth Road and beyond. The foot and bicycle traffic is steady, especially due to the fact that so many young families have recently moved into the area. Harrowsmith, unlike Kingston, is one of the last few places left that's affordable for young families to raise their kids and to commute into Kingston for work. This partly explains why every summer we see more and more local kids learning to ride their bikes on the KMP. We see more and more daycare and school groups out walking in greater numbers. So I only found out about the proposal to allow ATVs on the KMP trail from Verona to Harrowsmith this past spring. As soon as I found out, my wife and I spent time asking folks in the village if they had heard anything. Surprisingly, a vast majority of the village were not aware of the proposal at the time. This prompted me to reach out to a member of the county council to ask that the village be consulted about the issue. And I was thankful it was raised at county council, and thank you for rolling out the billboards and the consultation online. It's very well done. Almost immediately after learning about the proposal, my wife and I started going door to door to ask the Harrowsmith villagers what they thought about the proposal. And I'll say this, we went at it with a completely open mind. We were ready for whatever feedback we received. We said to each other in our living room, if most people in the village tell us they love the idea of opening the trail to ATVs, well, that's our answer. But after speaking with many of our Harrowsmith neighbors, we were surprised to hear almost unanimous feedback in favor of keeping the trail motor vehicle free in the summertime. So the next step I took was to collect their thoughts and draft a statement based on the concerns they shared with me. Many of the folks I spoke with didn't feel comfortable speaking today, so I volunteered to advocate on their behalf. I drafted this statement based on the initial feedback. Then the statement was shared as a petition online just 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks, that's all, to see what the response would be. As of this morning, it has been signed by 369 people, the majority of which live in the area and have the ability to enjoy the trail on a regular basis. I will read that statement now. A motion was recently brought to Frontenac County Council to open the KMP Trail to all terrain vehicles on the portion from Verona to Harrowsmith. On July 5th, 2023 at 10 a.m., a county committee will meet at the Verona Lions Hall, etc., etc. Harrowsmith is a thriving and affordable community for young families outside the Kingston area. Children use the KMP Trail every day in the summer to learn how to ride their bikes, walk with their parents, and explore the countryside with their friends and schoolmates. Harrowsmith is also a thriving area for retirees who use the trail for exercise. The trail is regularly used by horseback riders, cyclists, hikers, and dog owners. In the summer, the trail is a saving grace for Harrowsmith locals. None of these activities can be carried out on the busy roads and highways. Many ATV riders are responsible and conscientious when they drive. Unfortunately, not everyone is. Already, there are ATV drivers unlawfully using the trail, flying through the Harrowsmith area at high speeds. The reality is there are simply not enough resources to police excessive motor vehicle speeds on the trail. Opening the trail to ATVs will effectively turn the KMP into another motor vehicle highway in the summertime, where all these other trail activities take place. The trail around Harrowsmith has thickly forested, blind corners. The trail is narrow. Side-by-side ATV takes up most of the trail width. Steady ATV use would make it impossible for children, retirees, and the others I mentioned to use the trail safely. ATVs are not barred from coming to Harrowsmith. All folks are welcome in the village. Riders can come and support local businesses by using the roads in the area. On the other hand, you can't safely walk your family on Highway 38. If you're a resident near Harrowsmith and you'd like to continue using the trail for all these other purposes, please sign this petition to make your voice known. So as I stated earlier, 369 people signed that statement online in 3 weeks. Based on the rate at which it was signed, I can only imagine how many signatures it would attract if it had the same time to circulate as the other original petition to approve the trail for ATV use. And here's another important point. The people that signed this are not an organized group. There was no membership here to lobby for support. It's simply an organic response from voluntary participants, and it's already in just 3 weeks, a significant number of people. But councillors, even more focused than this online petition, I also took the same draft door to door in Harrowsmith and spoke with residents in the immediate village in person. I started the conversations from a neutral position each time, before even mentioning that I was carrying the petition with me. Because I was genuinely curious, I asked, have you heard about the proposal and how do you feel about it? They were open-ended questions, not leading questions. I wanted their true responses. And I was prepared to have a nice chat about our mutual love of ATV riding and just walk on. But in just 4 evenings, I spoke with 23 households. I spent at least 20 minutes chatting with the folks at each home. Only 2 of those 23 homes decided not to sign. They first chose not to sign because the first one chose not to sign because they were a member of the ATV club. They shared my concerns, but didn't want to wade in. The second was simply in favor of opening it up to ATVs. So that leaves 33 villagers in 21 homes in the core of Harrowsmith, right near the trail, who agreed with the statement I just read. If I had more time before this meeting, I would have continued visiting. But this sample size of our small village is significant enough to say confidently that 94% of the Harrowsmith village, plus or minus a percentage or two for a margin of error, does not want to change the use of the trail to allow motor vehicle access after the snowmobile season. I have a copy of every online signature here to hand in to the committee. I also have a copy of that handwritten draft. These pieces of paper contain those 400 signatures. I'll just take a moment to say, councillors, and I hope you'll agree, 369 online signatures in 3 weeks is one thing. But 94% of the village of Harrowsmith, the village on whom this will have a direct impact, the village that uses the part of the trail that is the very subject of this proposal, the village that uses that portion every single day to walk, learn to ride a bike, ride horses, exercise their dogs, or push strollers, the voice of that village specifically should carry additional and significant weight in your review. I'll finish out the remainder of my submissions today by offering just a few of my own thoughts on the matter. My thoughts expand on the concerns raised by the Harrowsmith villagers through this petition. They're also from our firsthand experience. My first point, allowing ATVs in the summertime to mix with the busy foot traffic on the portion south of Verona presents a simple conflict of uses. Using a trail not much wider than a few people across as a walking, horseback riding, cycling trail on one hand, and as a roadway for motor vehicles capable of traveling over 100 kilometers an hour on the other is simply not safe, nor is it reasonable. And I'll be the first to say, I'm not most concerned about the majority of ATV club members who are likely responsible, considerate drivers. It's the 20%, even the 10% of other drivers who don't slow down. We already deal with a couple unlawful drivers here and there blowing past us on the trail, but opening the floodgates to all kinds of other riders, both responsible and irresponsible, renders it effectively unusable for the rest of us. There are simply not enough resources for the OPP to police the trail for excessive speeds in the vast spaces between roadway checkpoints. Even if a reckless driver is spotted, they're gone before anything can be done. But let's just step back a minute. Even when it comes to responsible drivers, look, we've all been there. We've all made mistakes. It only takes one time coming around a corner too fast to hit a bunch of school kids in the middle of a trail on a group walk. These facts, these risks cannot be written off by a wave of the hand saying, well, a few bad actors ruin it for everyone. When all it takes are a few bad actors to injure or kill someone around a blind corner on the trail near Harrowsmith. For the same reason, we have cordoned off swimming areas in our lakes, like the one at the Point, where motorboats aren't allowed to drive through, even at slow speeds. The two uses simply don't fit together in the same place, especially when that space is too tight or too small to safely fit both. So pushing ATV access down into the Harrowsmith area where there's high volume residential pedestrian traffic makes the trail unusable and unsafe for anyone other than ATV drivers. Furthermore, the only folks that I've heard argue that everything is working on the trail around Verona either have a vested interest in riding an ATV on the trail, or they aren't one of the number of people I've spoken with who say they now cannot use the trail to safely walk, bike, or otherwise. Regardless, the issue today is not whether it's working in Verona. The Verona decision has been made for better or worse. That's not the issue. The issue is whether it will work between Verona and Harrowsmith, especially near Harrowsmith, closer to Kingston still, and frequented by the pedestrians I mentioned earlier. And I submit, based on the evidence, councillors, It simply doesn't work. Even for a trial period, the risk is too high in the busy area of Harrison now. My second point, I've also heard it argued that snowmobiles are motor vehicles too. Why should they be allowed to be on the trail? Again, the issue is not about snowmobiles today, who have had approval for years. But I'll say this, relatively few people are using the trail for walking in wintertime. Nobody's cycling in the snow. And that's the balance, that's the trade-off. The snowmobilers predominantly use this part of the trail in the winter, and in the summer, that's the time when pedestrian activities are able to take place more freely. My third point, there's a clear jurisdictional conflict that the county needs to take into consideration, at least with respect to the original proposal I saw. Anything south of the point where the KMP crosses Graham Road shouldn't even be on the table for proposal. So just for clarity, there's a point just south of Graham Road where the KMP actually merges into a single trail shared with the Cat Trail. That single trail then crosses Colebrook, Wilton, 38 before the two split off again. At that merging junction, Cat Trail users and KMP trail users are forced on the same path. So allowing ATVs on any point south of Graham Road forces ATV traffic to do one of three things. One, drive on a pathway shared with Cat users, even though the Cat Trail has expressly rejected ATV use. Two, peel off onto private property or farmers' fields. Or three, turn around and drive back to Graham Road and exit there anyway. But I would go one step further to say that at very least anything south of Petworth Road, just north of Harrison, is simply too close in proximity to the highest density pedestrian traffic area and too close in proximity where Cat Trail users spill over into the KMP. My fourth point, and I'm coming to the end here, councillors.
2 minutes.
Yeah. I've heard some arguments from ATV drivers saying that they feel unfairly ostracized from the trail. I've heard that they don't want to be the only group left out. Well, outside the issue I raised earlier about incompatible use, there is simply no grounds for this claim. Most of the KMP goes through remote and very rural areas. Most of the KMP is safely ATV drivable. And for that reason, a majority of the trail is already lawfully accessible by ATVs. A minority of the trail, the strip from Verona south to Kingston, is reserved for non-motorized summertime use. So if you look at it that way, currently there's a pretty reasonable balance. And the balance actually skews in favor of ATVs. So any further encroachment upsets that balance too much, in my view. A quick additional point, I've also heard the economic arguments that ATV traffic will help local businesses in Harrison. This may be true. I don't discredit that claim. But that fact alone, however positive it might be, does not outweigh the pile of concerns and problems the allowance raises. And the final submission I'll make today is this, councillors. I've seen the results of the survey that was conducted by the county. It's significant that the results of that survey, with a sample size of 408 people, were effectively 50-50 when taking into account a margin of error. And councillors, remember, this survey wasn't just a simple poll put out for a new trail to ask how we should use this new trail. This was a survey to canvass the region to see if there would be a significant enough pushback on changing the law, or at very least, regardless of the intent, that is the survey's purpose by default. And the pushback was substantial. Councillors, in a circumstance where you effectively have a 50-50 split like this, it is in the county's best interest to take the neutral position. And the neutral position is to leave the law and the trail as it is, to leave it usable by the majority of user groups rather than favor one special interest group. That is the path of least resistance here. And I'll be the first to admit, if it was 10%, it'd be a different story, but that's not the case. And even more significantly, that 47% who are against the proposal, they're just the tip of the iceberg. They're not a unified organization. They don't have a membership to law. So councillors, this isn't a first past proposal circumstance where both sides have equal time, lead time pre-survey. And you've only just started to hear from that group. It's the tip of the iceberg. That 47% number should carry a great deal of weight in coming to the conclusion that the proposal is simply too disruptive and causes too much pushback in the community to pass. And I'll conclude on that point of destruction. Just last week, we were riding our ATVs out at our family farm and having a safe and enjoyable day through the Ontario countryside. It's days like those that reaffirm my belief that this is an important pastime. But that very same week, my wife and I took our baby girl for a walk in her stroller. We walked past that Y junction on the KMP portion south of Graham Road. As we were coming around the sumac trees that shroud that corner, an ATV came whipping through and almost hit us. By chance, the driver saw us at the last minute, but we were nearly run off into the ditch. This happened only 2 weeks after the survey was released of all times. That moment solidified for my wife and I weeks of feedback from our community and the reasonable certain concerns that they raised. So I urge the committee to recommend against the motion to allow motor vehicle access to the KMP south of Verona to Harrowsmith. And I appreciate your time and attention this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, John, and this is very purple. Any members for John? Judy?
Yes, thank you very much for doing that personal survey. That always is great to talk to people and you know the people. Were any of them business owners? And that I know the majority would be residents. That were any of them business owners? Just to give a balance.
A few of them I didn't really talk to them about business ownership, but a few of them talked to me about the careers that they had, and they were business owners. I did not talk to them about where the business was, but based on my assessment, it was local. But I have the signatures on a sheet for you folks. I'm sure you know a lot of the people on the sheet, so you're welcome to have a look, and this is actually to be submitted.
Okay. Mike?
Just a clarification, we are not councillors, at least I'm not. So we are just non-elected committee members, volunteers, okay, just a clarification.
I wasn't sure who was going to be.
There are a few of us elected, but I think we declared that as we introduced ourselves. The rest are public,
Thank you very much.
volunteer.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, next week, Heather.
Through you, Chair, anyone who has any written permission, if they could just pass them along to myself, either at the end of the meeting, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, and now we have Heather Keating, Friends of the Cat Trail.
Are you going to be showing the presentation as well?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. I can't see it. So I was going to try and give you an indication as to when to flip, but I feel like I'm echoing here. And yes, I am Heather Keeling. I am the volunteer coordinator from the Cataract Way Trail. Our chair of the Friends of the Cataract Way Trail is Ross Sutherland. Normally, Ross would be here today. He sends his regrets. He has other commitments, but rest assured that Ross Sutherland is still very passionate about the Cataract Way Trail. He just really needs to be with his family today. So I'm presenting on his behalf. So next slide, please. The Friends would first really like to thank you for letting us address this issue, which we feel is important to the health of our community and the health of the Cataract Way Trail. The Friends of the Cataract Way Trail is a volunteer organization that supports the Cataract Way Trail. We work very closely with our Cataract Way conservation friends about issues on the trail and help with maintenance. We had just under 400 bikers, walkers, and horseback riders respond to our last survey. So we do speak for a fair number of them from our local community and neighboring cities, who in increasing numbers are using the Cataract Way Trail. Next. At both our most recent board meeting and our annual general meeting, the Cataract Way Board voted unanimously to oppose the extension of ATV use on the KMP Trail due to the threat it poses to the Cataract Way Trail. The question that we have is, of course, not to surprise you after the last presentation, is why the meeting is not being held in Harrowsmith. Harrowsmith, along with current trail users, would be the most affected by the extension of ATV use. And we're surprised that instead the community with the club that is wanting the extension has been selected. We hope you would consider holding an evening meeting in Harrowsmith and advertise the meeting on the KMP and Cataract Way Trail, so those most affected will be best able to respond. The first concern the Friends have is, where are the ATVs that travel down the KMP to Harrowsmith going? If that section is opened up, the logical trailhead would be in Harrowsmith, with many ATV users wanting to start there. The current parking at Highway 38 is too small for its current uses. And it does not provide a good drive-through like the recently built Verona Trailhead. Bringing ATVs to Harrowsmith will necessitate building a larger trailhead parking lot, or cars and trailers will park along Highway 38 and in Harrowsmith. The other fact under, where are the ATVs? Oh, sorry. The other fact regarding where the ATVs are going when they come to Harrowsmith is that some of them will want to go onto the cat trail. It only makes sense because it happens now, even without access from a sanctioned trail. The problem is that this use is not allowed for most of the trail due to restricted covenants on easements. Next slide, please. The major complaint we have already is that, oh, I think you've already, okay. Major complaint we have already received is about unauthorized trails used by ATVs. They damage the trail and damage the trail infrastructure. Unauthorized trail users damage gates and signs. They interrupt the quiet enjoyment of people on the trail, in their yards, and even in their homes when their windows are open. As well, they can create quite a bit of dust. We get complaints about ATVs forcing users off the trail, speeding or illegally accessing, sometimes damaging private property. This illegal activity has increased the call for better, more expensive enforcement. It has increased the conflict between ATV drivers, property owners along the trail, and as well, a conflict with non-motorized trail users. All these problems are happening when ATVs are expressly prohibited on the Cataract Way Trail. Next slide. Couple of final observations. ATVs are already allowed on all the roads in St. Frontenac and can use extensive network of trails running north from Verona to Renfrew, Armfrog, Carlton Place, Calidar, and beyond. None of these trails or roads are particularly friendly to walkers and bikers. Bringing the ATVs to Harrowsmith will displace users that don't wish to share the trail with ATV. And the question is, where will they go? Next slide. Unfortunately, displacing current users would likely happen quietly. Our webmaster and his wife barely walked in the summer on the KMP north of Verona, now due to the ATVs. Due to a dangerous experience with two snowmobiles that my friend and I had, we no longer walk the Cataract Way Trail in winter, but may if it is a straight section. I would have not known about the possible ATV extension if I wasn't a member of the Friends. We haven't seen signs on the KMP or Cataract Way trails advising of this proposed change. Folks coming from the south to Harrowsmith along with the Cataract Way Trail really need to be informed. In business, you always want to make sure that you're serving your current clients. Adding ATVs increases the safety risk and lowers the enjoyment for current users, with the added concern of affecting the surrounding trail and communities. We hope, as I mentioned, you will consider holding an evening meeting in Harrowsmith, as they seem to have concerns, and casting a wider net by educating and inviting trail users by putting signs north and south of Harrowsmith on the KMP and on the Cataract Way Trail, which of course we'd be happy to help with. Next slide. We're finding that many, oh, not to that one yet, sorry. We're finding that many people are coming to the Cataract Way Trail from outside the county, drawing visitors to the region. Cataract Way Trail is a key link and an off-road cycling route from Kingston to Ottawa. In 2022, Ontario by Bike chose to ride the Cataract Way Trail from Harrowsmith and down the KMP. They promoted Frontenac County as a tourist destination. But do you believe that large biking groups will still wish to plan events through Harrowsmith? There's ATVs on the trail. We know that the quieter uses of the trail are a major attraction to people considering building and buying in the area. For South Frontenac, this is one of our main economic development activities. Let's continue to grow Frontenac County by protecting and supporting communities and trails. And yes, this is our summary of concerns. Thank you. Our potential parking issues along Highway 38 and Harrowsmith, increased illegal use of the Cataraqui Trail, damage to Cataraqui Trail infrastructure, displacement of current users, and the negative effect on tourism and economic development. And open to questions, if folks have some. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heather. Any questions or comments for Heather? Okay, very good. Thank you. Next, we have Pat McNamee, who's also from the Friends of the Camp Trail.
I'm going to read this and I may make a few mistakes. My name is Pat McNamee. I'm a taxpayer in Frontenac County and the island. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to express my concerns about extending the ATV and dirt bike use on KP Trail south to Harrison. I've been a volunteer for more than 20 years on the Cataraqui Trail. The Cat Trail is a green trail, no ATVs, no dirt bikes or vehicles. We have had many occasions over the years where ATV and dirt bikes have trespassed over the trail, causing grief, great grief. I'm listing, I'm going to list in just a few of them. A young woman was killed at Camden East. She hit a post trespassing on the Cataraqui Trail. A young man graduating from high school, like 17 years old, at Elgin, was speeding on the Cataraqui Trail, trespassing, hit a dead elm tree, and is paralyzed for life. There was a $20 million lawsuit about that. Okay, two ladies were hurt near Smith Falls. They were hit by an ATV. They were hospitalized. Local homeowners were upset by trespassing on their property. The man put two pails of rusty nails on the trail in retaliation. Kind of mean stuff. Fuel tanks were stolen from the boats in Portland waterfront. And the fuel was used on the Cataraqui Trail. I recovered a half dozen jerry cans. I guess that's all. I've got one question for the committee. And I hope somebody, can hunters on their ATVs with cased firearms travel on the KP Trail? What about North Frontenac? What about any of the wards?
I
Can hunters?
believe that would be controlled by the firearms rules, which is provincial, and I'm not a hunter, but Fred is.
Yeah, the rules are now that if anybody's on a trail, you cannot fire.
No, just carry it.
Yeah, you can carry it.
You can carry it
If it's in a case,
if it's in a case.
and you can drive it on a road or anywhere like that.
Yeah, so they are allowed firearms in case on the KP Trail.
I don't know if they, like, right now, the KMP Trail isn't really developed yet in North Frontenac. And it's just been changed, given over to the county.
Is there crown land? adjoining the KP Trail up to Sherwood Lake.
There are lots of,
Crown land,
and there's a lots of private land too.
well, I'm concerned about crown land, because anybody can hunt on crown land.
Sure.
So you could take your gun off and go into the woods.
But because it's a trail, you can't shoot from the trail.
You, oh, no, you can't shoot from roads, you have to be 10 meters off any road, yeah.
And again, that's up to the province to look after that.
So,
Yeah, the M&R, look after that. They
so you do have crown land along the KP trail,
I mean, there's something between Snow Road and,
so I could trailer my ATV or up to 38 and put my gun and go north.
Only in hunting season.
Load my gun, yeah, on the ATV,
Just like you can in your vehicle.
yeah.
you can't have a load of guns.
And then it comes crown land up there somewhere in North Frontenac, I could get off and hunt. Okay,
Okay,
thank you very much.
you are welcome. Do we have any questions for, okay, thank you very much. Next, we have. Next, we have Mark Moles from Verona ATV Club. Mark. Just check.
Mark Moyes. Adjacent landowner. The KP Trail and just here in Verona. Thanks very much for having a meeting in my hometown. We have been there 19 years and some time ago, I was asked to sit on a trail advisory committee. And Peter and I were talking about this. It's a while. It's a long time ago when they started the KP Trail rejuvenation and bringing it up to a standard that we would all be able to use it recreationally. Since then, I founded and am president of the Verona District ATV Club. 2.5 years ago, myself and a good friend started it up and said, we need to get to some other places and have some fun. And tried to get the trails available to us so that we can go places. Now, why that's important is because when you're making a trail, anybody making a trail, trails connect communities. So in our case, the KP, a wonderful resource, connects Arrowsmith and Verona and Charlotte Lake. And we love riding these trails because we can get to family, friends, and places to do something in those communities. And with that, I'd like to bring a few numbers. Economic impact of ATV. So Mr. Abrams talked about hiking, cycling. There's many cyclists here. Their economic impact is there. They're gonna buy something at the store. They're going to not buy a trail pass. They don't need that. Not buy gasoline. They don't need that. Maybe buy lunch or a meal. The average spending of an ATV rider for a day is $160. Now, I didn't want my wife to hear that, but the fact is, you spend money and it's an economic driver. So when I have the support of somebody like Mr. Gilmore of Gilmore's Market in Harrowsmith and the gas station in Harrowsmith and the pizza joint, these are people that are going to benefit from us going and buying some gas and buying a meal. We don't, the Verona ATV Club uses our own money to try and improve the trail. We've had an excellent partnership with Richard Allen and the county for the past 2.5 years. If there's a project that comes up that we believe in, and we believe in a bridge, for instance, that gets across a creek, then we'll throw some money towards that. We've committed $7,000 this year to a bridge. We've given money every year that we've been in existence. We've done the same thing with the Tay-Hadlock Trail and Central Frontenac, and we're always trying to improve the entity itself. What everybody's here about is the trail. Every Monday morning, I get phone calls. Oh, Mark this, oh, Mark that. And what do you think the number one complaint is about? Dust control. So the trail, it's been a dry year. The trail is made of stone dust, and the four-wheelers churn it up. So, as usual, we're trying to improve the trail. My friend Jim and Trudy, who are residents of just south of Harrowsmith here, down the trail, created this monstrous thing on the back of the trailer with a big tube of water in it, and they mixed calcium in it, and they spread it on the trail to reduce the dust. Richard Allen and the county of Frontenac have put thousands of dollars into the same mixture to get on the trail to reduce the dust. I honestly believe that with a concerted effort with the county, we can greatly relieve the problem of dust. I'm going to speak to you about one other program that we have in the club, and that's the Trail Warden Program. So we have individuals who volunteer their time, and those individuals take a course through the Ontario Federation of ATVs. It's a Trail Warden course, and we talk about things that we can do on the trail while we're patrolling it to try and help it, a multi-use trail, be advantageous for everybody to use. And the big ticket issues, of course, are speed, alcohol, drugs. The number one question that we receive when we're out on the trail is where can we eat? So off they go to the local eateries. The Warden program has proved to be just great. Jim and Trudy met a couple that were in a tough spot. It was a hot day, I think, Jim, and they managed to help them out. They were cyclists. They were cyclists, you know, blown tire, hot, all of those things. Managed to get the tire repaired, get them to a safe place. It's that type of thing. It's called a Trail Warden program, but I really like the word ambassador. We're continually advertising the trail, making it useful to everybody. That's the key. Mr. Abrams made a good point about the streets are a speedway. They certainly are. And so if I want to go south from here and get some gasoline down in Harrowsmith, I have to run along the side of the road, sometimes on gravel, shoulder, sometimes not, because of boundaries or a little narrow median or whatever. And I very often ride with my granddaughter. My granddaughter is now 16, but she was 7 or 8. She's ridden with me many, many, many times, and I never take her on Highway 38. You wouldn't. There's transport trucks. The road's narrow. There's no space for you to go. And after the horrible fire tragedy in Verona, it just makes so much sense to go down to Harrowsmith and get some gas. The other, I thought, really interesting point of Mr. Abrams' presentation was that he was walking around and talking to people in Harrowsmith, which is great, and talking about our petition and where the names came from. I kind of tell you where, if there's 14 or 1,500 names on the petition, 900 of them, 900 of them are from our friends at the restaurant on the south end of Verona. Denise went to every table whenever anybody came in and asked them what their opinion was of using the trail with ATVs. And the vast majority of them signed. She didn't hold back their lunch or their French fries if they wouldn't sign it. They literally signed it in good faith. I just like everybody to take a neutral position on this. If the trail is a public entity, why are you not allowing somebody on it? We've heard what many people feel are the reasons for that. I would like it to be a neutral position where everybody is welcome to use the trail. We're going to do anything we can to make this work for everybody. If the decision is to go ahead, and no, it hasn't been decided that it's going ahead, as I've read many times on Facebook. We will do whatever we need to do to make it a good thing. Do we need to buy gates for the Cataraqui Trail to keep the ATV users off of it? Absolutely. Do we need a larger parking area in Harrowsmith to accommodate people taking their bikes off their trailers? Absolutely. I'm just going to leave you with the one question that I heard was, where are they going to go? Where we want to go is Harrowsmith. We don't want to go anywhere else. We want to go to Harrowsmith. We want to buy gas. We want to buy lunch at Gilmore's. We want to grab a pizza at Gabrielle's and make our way back. Thanks very much. Any questions?
Okay, any questions for Mark? Judy?
Thank you for your presentation. That I come from the Frontenac Islands, so when you mentioned Tay Hadlock Trail, is that part of the KNP Trail?
No, not yet. So east-west through central Frontenac, it joins Perth in the east and goes to Havelock in the back.
Okay. You also mentioned about the trail warden program. That have any of them taken bylaw officer training?
Yeah, so no, the course that is offered through the OFATV talks about bylaws, talks about all kinds of things. It's quite intensive little course, but it is just a half day. And when you talk about the bylaw enforcement, none of these wardens want to be police officers. None of them want to write tickets or tell somebody they're speeding or anything like that. We really are ambassadors.
And you also spoke about the parallel dangerous speeds of Highway 38 and an ATV on it. Have you given consideration of an ATV and a walking person? On
Yes,
the trail?
absolutely. And so that's why we reduce the speed in community zones to 20 kilometers an hour.
People that walk the trail often walk beyond community zones, correct? And the
Yeah.
cyclists as well.
Well, that's right. And so I invite someone to tell me just how many people are walking outside of those community zones, because it really is a long walk from Harrowsmith to Verona through Harding. Like there's not, I'm on the trail every day. So I ride my bicycle, I walk, I hike, and twice a week I ride my ATV. I don't see that many people in these long stretches in between the towns, but yes.
And you also made mention of how the signatures were gathered at the businesses in Harrismith and that, which I appreciate that, just for information's sake, and that with the survey that we had, I was quite impressed with the number of comments that were made on the survey versus a petition, that it's very easy to sign a petition, whether it's online or whether it's in person.
Yeah.
But to take the time to make the comments and that they were well thought out. And they were very articulate, and I hope that all the members of the committee have reviewed those comments because they were valid. Thank you very much.
Okay, Ron?
I don't have a comment for Mark. Are there more presenters? Because I have a bunch of comments and I have some sort of a recommendation if anybody wants to listen to it. But if there's more presenters, I'm willing to wait till that happens.
We have 10 more presenters. So, thank you, Mark.
If somebody comes up with something new that hasn't been said that is earth startling, I'll listen.
I hope that's the case, that
Can I ask a question?
Question.
sure.
Mark, my dad's farm is on the trail, okay? I want to take my 91-year-old dad down the trail. He built the KP trail when it was going through, when the trains went through. Does your ATV group, and it's a working farm, do you do garbage runs from the ATV perspective and pick up garbage?
Yeah.
Okay, because in the last 2 years, I have picked up water bottles, dirty diapers, which, trust me, I don't think an ATV rider has a child that young, okay? I have picked up papers. I have watched cyclists throw water bottles into the ditches. So now the ditch is all filled, the water's backing up on our farm. I can't even get on a trail to assist in that. But you do, how often do you do garbage pickup along the
So
trail?
we do one big project a year
Okay,
of picking up stuff. The wardens are picking up stuff all the time. So, and it brings up an interesting point.
Mark, speak into the microphone so we can.
That I think that once you allow these ATV users in there and our warden program, it improves the relationship with the neighbors all the time. It's all about picking up the garbage, slowing the guy down, maybe telling somebody that they shouldn't be on the trail right now if they're in some kind of situation. But, and the point about the farm is really good.
it's the garbage and people, we need our farmers and the equipment's expensive. So are the cyclists who I know are coming from Kingston, because I see them getting on the trail. And then I see them throwing stuff in the ditch. Are they gonna help us pay for our equipment when we need new equipment?
No,
Exactly.
so, and one of the things that I would like to advocate, if we get through to Harrison, is to talk to any farmers where it's just not gonna work going through here, and we go around somehow. So there are other districts, and by the way, there's 25 districts in Ontario of ATV clubs like ourselves. Other districts have worked with the farmers to use their land, but to go on the outside and around instead of going through.
Well, and that's what I would like to take our four-wheeler or ATV onto the trail to help clean the ditch. Because all the water is backing up and there really is, like, the county doesn't have the manpower to go that whole trail, cut the wood that's in the ditch, clear where it's supposed to be rerouted across to the swamp between Merton Road and Rail. The old train bridge, it's blocked. So why can't the farmers use the trails to assist with everybody, to assist with picking up garbage? Because you can't get there to do it now.
We need to move on to our next. Well, you know what? There's 10 more people who want to speak, and I think it is 11 o'clock now, so we're going to. I think Mark will be here and you can chat with him. Mark, you're staying.
I'll hang around.
Just with the general question, but that would those be on the.
Oh, okay, I will allow 2 questions. There was a gentleman over there and one back here, and then that's it. Okay, you first.
Just a quick comment. Just most avid cyclists, we carry water bottle cages. We have disposable, we have refillable water bottles. I've been cycling all my adult life, and for what it's worth, just for the record, that most cyclists will carry a cage and then fill water. I've not seen any cyclists fill water.
You can come sit in my farm and watch them.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I'm an avid cyclist, just for the record, carry water.
Great, thank you. And the gentleman back here.
This is what it looks like.
Yes.
John Sherman, you raised the issue of dust on the trail. And I'm interested to know, we're coping with that by putting calcium in the trail. How much calcium do you think will go on the trail Given the fact that calcium is a surface water pollutant and a wastewater pollutant, so I'm just wondering, without raising the dust on the trail, calcium would be necessary. So if there becomes extensive use of ATVs on the trail, then does that extend that there will be further use of calcium on the trail?
I'll let Richard or Jim speak to that. I'm not familiar with exactly how much calcium is poured into this. It's a lot.
I know we can't take our dogs on it, if you take that.
For sure. I don't take my dog on.
Oh, lovely.
Okay, we'll have Richard. Excuse me, we'll have Richard answer that question and then we're moving on.
Good stuff.
So we use a 35% calcium water solution that is spread at about 0.8 liters per square meter along the trail. And we do that once a year, and we've done that once so far. We've tried some other methods of calcium suppression, and it hasn't been effective. So that's the most professional, most specific way we've gone about it, so that we can monitor our progress.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to hear from Rod Wallace. Rod?
I got some questions then. So the main reason, Mark,
Please ask the questions to me.
the main reason they need the access to the trail is for pizza and gas. I didn't really have any prepared, sorry. How do they get their pizza and gas now? I just wondered how they,
I would imagine it's Corona
oh.
or Chevrolet or First or.
No, yes, I just thought they'd use jerry cans of the.
Okay, is that what you wanted to present?
I didn't, ready, sorry. One question though for Mark again. What kind of liability coverage do they have?
Okay, Mark,
15 million.
15 million.
That's just it. Or are you part of me? You mean me? No.
The ATV club.
Be part of the bigger group. The Ontario Federation of ATV. Because I didn't think you were before. Are you part now? For 2.5 years, and we've never not been part. We're a new club. Because snowmobile clubs are part of the bigger group that have huge liability coverage. And anytime there is a clogged drain in my area, they work with me, they let me clean up the ditches. I've never had any trouble.
Okay.
And I look forward to it. No. Anyway, I didn't have a lot.
I have a question.
Okay, Judy?
Two questions. That you said that the snowmobile club has huge liability insurance. What is huge? 100 million, 200 million? What is the
I forget the
reasonable
exact amount.
15 million third party liability deal with SC period, all their member club.
So 15 million.
15 million is the standard for the snowmobile club per incident.
Oh, I don't ask me. I just heard they have large coverage.
Okay, but
So there is coverage both for ATVs and for
right, but
snowmobiles.
right, I'm just trying to get clarity whether it's per incident, because 15 million doesn't go very far with the catastrophic injury. So I'm just wondering, is that an overall, like the house insurance, that's your maximum for every member? Or is that individual? I don't know.
Mark, can you answer that?
I would defer that question to our insurance company. We talk about the $15 million liability to all our members, adjacent landowners.
Okay. Fred?
Yes, regarding insurance, I believe that ATVs have to have their own insurance anyway. And I believe that's the same with snowmobiles as well. Like an individual, if you own an ATV, you're taking it out on the road, you gotta have your own insurance.
Yes.
As well.
Okay,
Okay,
good enough.
great. Next, we have Gordon Smith.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair.
Can you speak right into the microphones? Anyone listening needs to
Can you hear me
hear.
okay now?
That's better, yes.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I'm actually speaking not on behalf of myself, but of the Kingston Bellow Club. For those of you who are not familiar with us, we are a cycling club. We are headquartered out of Kingston. We have 250 members. And we cycle quite consistently in this area, and we do use the KMP trail. I would like to acknowledge the work that Richard Orser Allen has done, in particular his report to the committee. I think is extremely well done. There is only one comment in it that I would like to just highlight. And that is that I'm not quoting quite exactly, but it says some ATVers feel that they should have the right to enjoy the trail. This is not about rights, in my opinion and in our opinion. This is about a community working together to find a solution. The solution is that everybody wants to use the KMP trail. The KMP, from our point of view, is a very valuable resource. It's not only along it, but although the actual ownership is with Frontenac County, there are interests from far away, from widespread, that use and are interested in the KMP trail. Cycle touring is one of them. The Kingston Bellow Club uses the trail quite consistently. The fastest growing area of cycling in North America, excuse me, is gravel biking. And gravel biking is what we do on the KMP trail. There are also all sorts of other opportunities. And in our gravel riding, we visit the KMP off and on quite frequently. It is indeed a valuable resource. It is also a ribbon that runs from North Frontenac right through to Lake Ontario, including the city of Kingston, who has upgraded their trail to join the rural section of the trail. Our major concern has to do with next step, and I think this has been dealt with before. But we see the cat trail as being somewhat vulnerable to additional use or to the use of motorized vehicles. We hope that is not the case. Not that we think that cyclists should have exclusivity, or I should say non-motorized users should have exclusivity, but space is limited in our area because of our population and our growing population, and also because of the land ownership pattern. There is not a lot of crown land in the southern portion of the county. So consequently, we're all trying to squeeze on. Regarding the use of the KMP trail for transportation, we see it as a recreational resource rather than transportation. We, like the ATVers, are very uninterested in using the Highway 38 for transportation on bicycles. As a matter of fact, we simply, as a club, do not ride on Highway 38. So our alternative is the KMP trail. Also, when you look at places where people can walk, and this has been discussed before, where people can walk and have mind space, is the KMP trail. It's the recreational resource for the entire area. We, as a club, are willing to work with and to share
ideas and work our way to find a solution to this situation. We find that this is not going to be an easy decision. Some people are going to be disappointed, but we ask that you look to the future, that you consider the KMP trail as a very scarce resource. We also recognize that ATVs are big, they are heavy. They're like, from a cyclist point of view, they're like a transport beside you when you're on your bicycle. Quite not to that scale. But it's important that we share the use of the trail. And sharing can be that not that we're side by side all the time, but that ATVers have certain sections of the trail where they're free to go and free to do what they wish. And there are other sections that are left relatively undisturbed for the use of non-motorized users. So therefore, we as the Velo Club would like to oppose the not recommendation, I should say, but oppose the motorized use of the KMP as being proposed now. However, we are willing to work with the ATV Federation and the county to work on solutions for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, and you can just wait for a moment.
Just have one comment. I don't think it's fair to say that there are no motorized vehicles on those trips. Because I think if anybody knows what the growing electric bike phenomena is of people who are over, well, I'll say my age. I don't own one, but I know tons of people who have bought the electric bike to do the trails that are doing 30, 40 kilometers an hour. So to say that it's exclusively not motorized is not true.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, Judy?
And they carry no insurance.
Are
And they
That
carry no insurance.
that is actually my question, that the organized cycling clubs that you've spoken about,
yes,
is it mandatory to carry any sort of liability
yes.
insurance?
We carry, I believe, Megan, can you help me? Is it 2 million, 2.5 million?
The club carries insurance for club activities and includes that, virtually any cyclist that has another insurance policy is covered under the first bill. For example, my house insurance covers my cycling activities up to $5 million.
Okay,
I can
Yes,
speak to this.
we are insured, yes.
okay, and
So just to put it into the microphone,
Oh, pardon me.
do you
Yeah,
want to just repeat what this lady's just said about insurance?
yes, we do carry, the Kingston Velo Club itself does carry insurance. It's general liability insurance. And as well, most of the individual members carry insurance which covers cycling activities.
Okay. Judy, one more?
yes, you mentioned about the gravel biking being the most popular at this point in time, and what came to my mind were motocross type bikes up and down and around, and I'm wondering, have there been any serious accidents or interactions between pedestrians and cyclists who might be going at a high rate of speed, blind corners, et cetera, and that?
You use the word motocross, which I think is motorized.
No, the little dirt, and mountain bikes, sorry,
Mountain bikes, the mountain bike community in Kingston have their own club. I'm not part of it, so I really can't speak to them.
So they haven't been out on the trail.
I don't know how much they use the trail. They have their own property. And I believe that most of their activity is on that property, but I can't be certain.
Okay, great, thank you. We do need to move on. We have many people yet. Robin Ellis.
bring something a little bit different to this meeting. Thank you for having me and listening to my notes. I'm here representing property owner who owns a large piece of property in Aerosmith that borders the back part of the property, borders all the way down along the KMP Trail. The property is located between Graham Road and just north of the Cataraqui Trail, and it is located west of Notre Dame Street. The property belongs to my wife and mother-in-law. The land was originally slated to be developed as a residential subdivision, and the park was given to Aerosmith by my wife's dad. So when we heard that they want to develop the KMP Trail and allow motorized vehicles to be roaring past on a nice nature trail, that would be a great walking spot or a wonderful spot for people in a new community to enjoy peaceful community. We were a little upset that's why we're here today.
Robin, speak right into the microphone. You have a very soft voice.
So basically, we just want to voice an opinion that we do plan on executing the wishes of my wife's father in developing this property into a subdivision for this community. And that is why we're voicing our opinion against having ATVs roaring by the backyard of these houses.
And you did that as a letter as well.
I
right?
did, I put it in writing. I just
Yeah.
thought, you know, there might be people here who didn't get to see it or hear it.
Great. Any questions for Robin? Comment?
Just a comment. I know that as a municipality, you can't say we're not gonna do something because somebody thinks they're gonna develop a subdivision in 20 years. Secondly, you already know that ATVs are using your property all the time because there's definitely a substantial trail through your property. So I'm not saying that I'm not opposed, I agree, not picking sides here, believe me. I just want to point out that there are tons of ATVs already using your property because they have a road through it. And it's not open there.
Yeah, trespassing has been a big issue with this property, and because we have been regular and monitored, it's very hard to keep up. We actually had to have a road removed from the property at one point.
That is concerning that we're talking about an illegal activity that's occurring on your property. Have you charged anybody with trespassing or just taken preventative measures?
Preventative measures were put in place with the guns installed, and they would prevent vehicles from accessing the property. Of course, it is never effective. They'll always cut a new trail or put a new entrance into a property that isn't policed regularly.
Follow up to that, then have you notified the OPP or notified the county bylaw officer of the trespassing that's going on? I believe that the OPP that would be most involved with that.
In the past, we actually have done that, and that's when we did put the physical barriers in place. We haven't been monitoring it since then.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have Margaret Elton. Margaret.
Pardon me. Madam Chair, my name is Margaret
A
Couchon.
little microphone right now, so speak right into it.
My name is Margaret Couchon. I am a member of the Kingston Bell Club. I am an avid gravel cyclist. I am also a taxpayer in South Frontenac. And I bought my property in South Frontenac as a direct result of riding the KMP Trail. Because when you're a bicyclist, as you have heard, we don't ride Highway 38. There's a number of other highways we don't ride. But for the same reason that our ATVers find it discomforting, it is life-threatening for cyclists to ride 38. That said, I have traveled the world on my bicycle, and I can testify that bike tourism is a huge economic driver. It's not quite as obvious as going down and buying a pizza. I get it. On the other hand, for example, 10 of us went to New Brunswick on our own 2 years ago and spent a week riding the Fundy Shore and left behind over $80,000 during COVID. Because we don't carry our food. We carry very little water. We mostly stay in hotels when we're touring like that. And so it is it's a subtle economic driver, but it's consistent. Every week, our gravel biking, which I'll give you a description of, loves to ride. I would say that 80% of our riding is South Frontenac area. And every week, somewhere between 10 and 15 of us buy water, buy gas, buy lunch, whatever, at a tiny little store that probably didn't have anybody else that day average. It's very hard to measure that against, I appreciate an influx of people having lunch on a Saturday. But I think, Judy, you would know that on Wolf Island, it's a very significant impact when you get bikers coming in and pulling into a small store after they've been biking all day. So don't assume that because they're cyclists and not ATVers or not, that there's no economic impact. Quite the opposite. There's lots and lots of studies showing that cyclists create one of the least environmentally damaging increases in economic return of any activity for tourism in the world. And if you want stats on that, I can get it, but it's consistent. How did I end up being a taxpayer in South Frontenac? By riding up the KP Trail, getting as far as Verona, and starting to go down Desert Lake Road. And at that time, Hinchinbrook wasn't paved, and so it was a great gravel. And then I got up to Davis Road, which was a great gravel road, which keep improving. And so it gets harder and harder to find a good gravel road to ride.
Up north, we have lots of them.
But actually, we keep finding them. And yesterday I found a Clark Road outside of Newburgh, which was quite something else yet again. What I really want to point out to you here is, as was said earlier, it's a limited resource. And it's not that I'm down on ATVs, far from it. They, far from it. It's all a way of enjoying it being outside. But it is a limited resource, and the reality of it is for safety reasons, number one. But number two, for the maintenance of the trail, we have to look at the reality of the yahoos. And yeah, there can be yahoos who are cyclists, there can be yahoos who are pushing their prams and leaving their day. They have a heavy machine that's going down a trail that if the trail is soft or the operator of that machine is doing wheelies and divots and such, they destroy the trail. And they destroy the trail for everybody. When a cyclist is a yahoo and throws a water ball beside, that doesn't mean somebody else can't walk down the trail. When a cyclist blows through a red light and maybe even causes an accident, that doesn't mean nobody can use that intersection again. But when you get a yahoo who's on an ATV, doing wheelies and doing divots and digging holes, and the water gets into them in the winter, and you get the sinkholes, they destroy the trail for everybody. And at that level, it becomes a necessity to look at the very limited resource and how to best use it. It's not a question of isolating one group from the other. We all know how many roads in Frontenac can you not drive down in a heavy truck, period, or you can't drive down in a heavy truck in certain weather. Why? Because it's going to destroy the road. And that is the reality of the yahoos or the ATVs, and I'm sure probably none of them here. I get it. I have no support for yahoos who are bad cyclists or anybody else, but they are out there, they're using the trail already. They are breaking the law already. And if you give them free access, it's going to make what is already a difficult situation to monitor and to police and to enforce worse. It's virtually impossible to catch them as it is. I would say it's going to be impossible when anybody on the trail is allowed. How do you at least say you're the bad guy? You can't. And just so you know about gravel biking is not mountain biking. But we do like rough roads and, thanks to the ATVs, we have sometimes and open roads, we get to follow them and I love it. When you do that, it's a little bit easier for us to get through. But it is an exciting sport and it is a huge economic driver. If one chooses to look at it that way, and I think South Park should look at it.
Thank you. Thank you, Margaret. Just stay there. Great. We are at Tim Ross now. Tim.
Good morning, if I think it is still morning, members of the committee, thank you for having this meeting. My name is Tim Ross. I've been an active member of the Sydenham community for over 50 years. My family's been active in the community for over 100 years, but perhaps most relevantly, just over 25 years ago, I was involved in the establishment of the Cataraqui Trail. And I worked personally in negotiating the trunk easements, working alongside South Frontenac, CRCA, and others. I'm very happy that this discussion has turned on to insurance and risk. That was the hardest part of getting that Cataraqui Trail going. And I'm no insurance expert, but I learned a bit at that time. What I can say is that it's complicated and it is scary, right? And for the reasons Mr. McNamee has reminded us. Couple of quick things on insurance. I will be brief. It's great for the member organizations to take out policies, but there are snowmobilers who are not members and ATVers who are not members. I do not think they get the benefit of those policies. There are also unlicensed, uninsured users of these vehicles. I have a snowmobile myself. I'd love to get a side-by-side. I have an e-bike and I love using all these things, but not on walking and cycling trails. The uses are incompatible. And as I think the committee has heard, in this section, the walkers and cyclists don't have any options. Whereas the ATVs seem like they do. And so I think on this hot topic, as I think you very correctly described it, I think this really is a balancing act. And I think that considerations like that, sort of who has options, who doesn't, that's really important. Fine, two more quick points. I believe the committee is already in receipt of submissions from the CRTA and the Trans-Canada Trail people, and we encourage you to consider those in your deliberations. Just quickly on accidents that may happen between cyclists and walkers. In my experience, that by the way, so the Cataraqui Trail goes right through my backyard, right? 9 feet away from the closest pillow on our property. And having observed this since inception, there's very, very few such incidents. Ours is actually one of the hilliest sections, so some bikes come whipping down right to where we are. But the nature of that interaction, walker, bike, it's not that bad, even in the worst possible case, nothing like a motorized vehicle accident. Another point is that, and I'll wrap up on this, we want to make all these things work, so we try to mitigate things, right? So we try to direct traffic with signs. Doesn't really work perfectly, it helps. Doesn't really work, doesn't really get the job done. The gates, the same thing, you know, it's a good idea, it helps, doesn't really get it done. I'm learning today about calcium and, you know, keeping the dust down, but if there's an environmental impact, someone else can tell you, it's just not a perfect solution. Yeah, a lot of people don't pay as close attention to these things as the people in this group, right? You know, a lot of people don't pay close attention to where one trail ends and the next begins. A lot of people think it's just a small transgression. If this one time I'll just sneak through this little area on my electric vehicle, or I'll stay out at night, or it's those little things that really add up and unfortunately lead to these often terrible situations. So that's it for my submission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Tim? Judy?
You raised the point about the insurance, and that is a significant point. One thing that caught my attention when I was doing my research is that you have to have insurance for your ATV if you cross or travel on a highway. And you have to be a licensed driver, 16 and over, et cetera, and that. However, when they're on the trail, they could be as young as 12 and unlicensed, et cetera, and that. And I don't know of any insurance company that would cover us a 12-year-old on an ATV. And having dealt with people who are suffering catastrophic illnesses or accidents, catastrophic accidents from this, it is a great concern, and that's why I would like to get the straight scoop even on the rest of the K&P trail as to what insurance we have from the county perspective. Thank you.
Okay,
All I can say from my perspective is we did a lot of work on that when we were setting up the Cataract Way Trail. I think we've done as best we possibly can, and there are still gaps and there are still risks. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
great, thank you. Okay. Mike Burzell, I think.
Right.
How do you pronounce it, Mike?
Yeah, I get it all the time.
It's Richard's handwriting that caused the problem, I'm sure.
We'll blame him.
Yes, my name is Mike Verizor. I have been an adjacent property owner to the piece of trail in debate for going on 36 years. I live right at the Hardwood Creek portion of it. I have experienced many things before and after the trail, most of them negative. I need to also add that since the inception of the KMP trail, I've been coming to these meetings for decades now. It was always stipulated that south of Bell Rock Road, it would not be motorized for anything other than snowmobiles. And at that time, Ron, there were no e-bikes yet. So we have been promised that the whole time. And I find that the trail is used now mostly by residents of Verona who are trying to escape the busy motorized portion which runs north out of the village. Yes, there's the dust, there's the noise, but there's the pollution to the wetlands, which are immediately adjacent to the trail and a large portion of it. Mr. Moyes, there are gas stations in Godfrey, and there's one in Harvington, which is actually 24-hour, which can be accessed by the highway. I'm sure Verona will seize the opportunity to rebuild its gas station in the future. But my main concern is the imposition upon the adjacent trail owners, especially Harrowsmith. Verona is already impacted. I've heard nothing but complaints from adjacent trail owners due to the traffic, due to ATVs, and of course, we'll call it the renegade traffic, the dirt bikes, and the wild, crazy people on the ATVs. But as I say, Mr. Abrams' number of 369 signatures, I found staggering, but that just goes to show you how many people are directly impacted by the extension of this trail. Mr. Wallace actually showed me a little survey he did from my house south. 85% of the people were opposed to it. 85 people, taxpayers, voters. If this goes through, we've been lied to again, right? It's always someone trying to claw a little bit more territory, hoping to get to that cat trail so they can maybe start applying their trade against the trail to open it up. And we all know here, Sydenham will never allow that. So Harrowsmith is a dead end. And actually, the main thing I was concerned about was how will they access the pizza from the trail? Will it be Graham Road? And will they cut through the park? to get up to Gilmore's? Or are they going to filter through the back streets of this small, quiet village, which does have a major highway running through the middle of it? Myself, 38 highway is 12 feet in front of my house. So I'm used to a lot of noise, a lot of traffic. The last thing I need is on a Sunday afternoon to have a family over and have ATVers or other people stopping on the bridge, as many foot traffic people do, and bikers and everything else. And I can hear their voices as clearly as you're hearing mine right now. And sometimes the conversation that we're hearing isn't very pleasant. So increased traffic due to ATV is only going to compound that. I've lived with this for 36 years and it's not pleasant. And only an adjacent property owner with direct access to this trail has experienced that. Well, I'm sure the majority of the responses to this survey have been from non-adjacent property owners. Just people who think, yeah, that's good. That'll be good for the county, or good for the South Frontenac, be good for Harrowsmith. I'm not against Harrowsmith. I want to see them do well. But the thing is, how are they going to access it crossing 38 highway? I mean, we all know what that highway is like, especially in the summertime. The flow of traffic coming out of that village can sometimes, you need a lunch just to sit there and wait to cross the road. So how much danger is going to be introduced to this situation by, and these businesses are on the east side of the highway. Nothing is on the trail side. So now you have ATVers coming off the trail. I'm not aware of designated points of exit yet, but as I say, at some point, you're gonna have them filtering through the village, around the soccer fields and through the residences and popping out. And the thing is, Papa Pete's, the pizza joint down in the village, is even a more condensed area and can only be accessed by going down through a bottleneck at the top of the hill, going south down into the village, or coming out from the residences on the west side of the village. So are we going to create an unfair situation economically for the one that's easier to access? Or like, how's this gonna work? I see introducing a lot of ATVs into an already congested highway corridor as a great danger. And honestly, I don't think we need the tragedy to tell us that we were wrong in doing this. It is 9 kilometers, mostly 4 or 5 of it is a drag strip through farmers' land. And really, it's a dead end that serves no purpose other than to satisfy an empty stomach, which can be filled in 2 restaurants in Berlin. And I just don't see the common sense to the extension of this. I don't believe the economic benefit outweighs the tragedy which could occur, or the imposition upon the people who are using these trails for their walking their dog, bicycling. I've seen horses behind my house, an ATV going by, a horse is gonna do to it. I mean, unless it's a really mellow horse, it's gonna get a little jumpy. And a lot of this trail is elevated with a very short little fence beside it. And I don't know, I just see too many negative aspects to this, besides the fact that, yeah, they're gonna be going past my backyard. Well, lots of other people too, but lots of people are a lot closer to the trail than I am. At least I have 90 feet, but I have water between it and the trail. So as I say, the sound carries very clearly. And in the wintertime with snowmobiles, they're a lot less impactful to the environment. Maybe not as damaging if they do happen to get off the trail. The ATV does nothing but damage when it goes off the trail onto virgin ground. If it's soft, ruts, who knows? It's just the trail itself will take a beating as well. So there'll be increased maintenance, which means increased costs. And I'm not exactly sure on all the costs involved, but once again, the inception of this trail, it was promised no taxpayer dollars were going to be used on this thing. And I don't think that's held through the whole history of the trail to date. So anyway,
Okay.
I'm just concerned about that. Thank you very much for
Thank
your
you very
time.
much, Mike.
Thank you.
Just stay there in case we have a question. Judy?
So you're saying that no one has surveyed any of the adjacent landowners specifically in that along this section?
Actually, Mr. Wallace, just showed me that one night he came to my door and he was just surveying the people along adjacent property owners. And his results, I'm not sure how accurate, but his results at that time were 17 of 20, which is 85% were opposed.
Okay, so to the deputy warden, that has Frontenac County that owns the trail done any survey to any of the adjacent landowners? And on that point, the quote pilot project that was started in an earlier section, have we surveyed the adjacent landowners before and after?
So we mailed by post, 124 letters to neighboring landowners, associated with this, inviting them to provide comments directly to me, or to participate in the survey, or to attend this meeting. So we didn't have time to organize a door-to-door survey campaign using staff resources from the point of direction to this meeting. But I think we've made an effort to reach out to the landowners who are adjacent to the trail. Does that answer your question?
Do we have a report on that then? Because as it's been indicated, they're the most directly affected.
So information regarding this is in the package. There's a section under neighboring landowners. Some have identified themselves in the survey, some provided us with correspondence, and that was included in the package.
Can you point to which page that was? Because I went through this package pretty thoroughly and I didn't see a specific area for the adjacent landowners.
We're having a look here.
Grant.
Yes, sorry, go ahead, Ron.
Well, the only comment I'd like to make is everybody knew about it. It was very well advertised after the initial. And I think if I had a concern about anything, I'm gonna make darn sure everybody heard me. So they are given the opportunity. That's why we're here today. Everybody's given an opportunity to speak to it. The sign was up for several weeks in Verona. And if you sent out 120 letters, if somebody wanted to hear your voice, I'm sure they would have heard it.
And there's still time for folks. And there's still time for folks to give us their comments as well. It doesn't stop today. Okay, this lady?
Yeah, I circulate here among the board members here. I have this picture volunteers sent to us. It's taken between Wilton and Highway 38. And you can see where the ATV, which is supposed to be there, has actually been cutting across there. There looks like they're making a little road there to go to the Centex.
Yeah, you can start it at that end and we'll ship it around. Okay, thank you very much, Mike. We're going to go on to Miriam Delaney is next.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. Unlike most of the previous speakers, I'm actually a new resident to the area. I moved to a property on Masonville Lane, which is just off Craig Road. And the KMP trail actually cuts through my property. And I have a bird's eye view of, there's actually a stop sign there. And it's in the community safety zone where it's 20 kilometers. So I would just like to speak to my personal experience, which is that it's not just dogs. The majority of trail riders do not comply with the 20 kilometer. Now, if you know just how slowly you have to go on an ATV to be at 20 kilometers, they just don't bother. The stop sign is seen more as a suggestion as opposed to a stop. I have spoken to the OPP. In fact, I had a visit from an OPP officer, And as we were standing there chatting, his car was parked on the side. Several ATV riders rolled through and waved without stopping. So there, from what I can tell, I've only been here a short time, but from what I have seen, there is no enforcement. So safety measures that you put in place aren't any good if there isn't any enforcement of them. If ATV users feel that they can do whatever they want, they will. And yes, the majority of them, you know, go a little more slowly because it's a community safety zone, but I can tell you that on Saturday night, about 5 or 6 o'clock, they start coming back from wherever they've been. And at that point, it's dangerous. We often drive down to Harrowsmith so that we can walk or cycle on the non-motorized portion of the trail, just because it's safer. I personally have been almost hit a couple of times on my bicycle with ATV drivers who were screaming at me that it's 50-kilometer zone. The portion of the trail through our community is not 50 kilometers. But again, not that paying that much attention, particularly if the riders are not that familiar with it. I mean, I was shocked when I found out that you were considering extending the motorized portion. I understood that the portion in Verona was motorized because the trailhead was put there and that it was a pilot project that was then extended. But I was stunned that we were considering extending it to Harrowsmith. An additional concern I have is climate change. We all see the wildfires that we're dealing with. So why we're encouraging the use of fossil fuel vehicles, I don't understand. I am concerned for my lungs with the calcium chloride that it puts down, because it doesn't solidify until it's rained. So with ATV flying through, that dust has calcium chloride in it. So my recommendation is that you keep that portion of the trail not motorized, treated as a precious natural resource that needs to be protected and needs to be used in a safe manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Todd Norris.
Morning, thanks for having me allowed to speak this morning. My name is Todd Norris. I've been a resident in the area for approximately 20 years. We moved up near Piccadilly at that point and have a farm up in that area. As a local resident, we also have a couple dogs, and between cycling and dog walking, I'm out on the trails a lot, everywhere from the north end of the KMP down to Kingston and out west on the Cat Trail, as far as it goes to Strathcona, and then back to at least over to Chafee's Locks area. So I'm quite familiar with all the different parts of the trails and what they're like in different places. I'm a former ecologist with the Ministry of Natural Resources for 30 years out of Kingston, so I'm also familiar with the wildlife and the plant life that exists along the trails. I guess the main point I'd like to make in addressing this situation today is that myself, and as I mentioned, I'm a cyclist, so I'm familiar with that end of things as well. I do ride an ATV on our farm for farm use, but that's about the extent of it from the ATV section. I understand people's interest in doing that out on the trails, though that's not foreign to me at all. And I would say from my experience that the majority of ATV riders are very courteous, and they do slow down when they approach me for the most part. There, as always, as everyone has said, there's always the outliers that are out there, unfortunately. Anyhow, I think I just want to make the point that my feeling is this is a very important section to maintain non-motorized, because it does feed the desires of a lot of people from the three main communities, Verona, Hartington, and Harrowsmith, to get out there and enjoy a quiet place on the trail. There aren't too many sections that are as quiet as it. I think that even a lot of the cyclists coming up from Kingston often tend to stop in the Harrowsmith area. There are some that go beyond, but I think the majority come up right from Kingston are going to Harrowsmith and then back. That's just my sort of guess to some degree. So when I want to find a quiet place to walk, and right now at this time of year, that means anywhere but north of Verona, especially on the weekends because of the amount of ATV use. So I go down to Petworth Road or Verona, and I park in either of those places and walk south to Harrowsmith and back. And it's just a really nice section. It's quiet, and I meet a lot of people doing the same thing, walking their dogs or walking with their kids or babies, cycling, all the jogging. I've seen all those activities taking place, horseback riding. It's just a very nice section. You're going through forests, fields, wetlands with lots of species of wildlife to observe. In behind the dump, there's a lot of activity with ravens and gulls, all kinds of turtles and things. So it's an interesting section to walk. I think the pressure or the ability for people to enjoy this section as a non-motorized section is even expanded when you consider the future subdivision that's going in at the Hardington area, as well as the one that was mentioned potentially this morning by the other fellow. I've forgotten the name of the fellow in Harrowsmith. Whether or not that happens or not, but I think this could just be a valuable section for people to walk and enjoy as a quiet place, especially as more people in the local area come to use it. And I think that is one important thing that should be sort of brought out, is that for the local people, it's really significant to have that quiet section. There are people that come from outside too that obviously enjoy it and use it, but for the locals, it's a very important section to have, because there aren't really any sections left that you can do that on in this very close area here. When the big part of the problem is when you're out, especially like me, where I'm walking a couple dogs, it gets quite difficult to constantly get over. Especially when you have trains of ATVs coming along, you'll see them coming, so you get over 100 meters or so before they get there, and then there may be 3 or 4 or 5 of them going by, so you could be standing there for 3 minutes or so, just waiting for people to get by. I think if this is allowed to go further south to Harrowsmith, I think it will also add pressure to the cat trail to allow ATV use on that. And as many people have said, it's not equivalent with snowmobiles, just because they're used in the winter when most people are not out walking in huge numbers or cycling in huge numbers the way they are in the summer. And of course, just to mention the environmental impacts, noise, dust, exhaust, road kills further north. I've seen lots of road kills, snakes and turtles, primarily through ATV use. Certainly bikes do some of that as well, but the majority are done through ATV use. I guess that's the main point.
Thank you, Todd. Any questions or comments for Todd? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Bob Brown. That church is a long walk from the back.
My name is Bob Brown. I'm a resident of Bell Rock and also basically a daily user of the cat trail. But the daily use is really from Verona south, because every day we walk our dogs, every other day we cycle. And we just find it too dangerous to go north of Verona. So all of our dog walking, all of our cycling is done to the south. So from the interest of our own safety, that's what we choose to do. I suspect that if the trail does go through, that you'll see people like myself and other cyclists and visitors to the area not want to do that section. They'll go someplace else. The second point I want to make is that, excuse me, yesterday, my wife and I were on the trail from Petworth going south to Harrowsmith on our bicycles. And they're gravel bikes. Good to the people who are maintaining the trail, because from Petworth going down to Graham, it is as smooth can be. They just recently resurfaced the side of the road and compacted it, so it's just marvelous. Except when you get past Graham, south of Graham, which is not done, and where the ATVs do come over. From where, I'm not sure. I suspect probably from the back areas. But the ATVs are there, and the reason why you know they're there is because of the ruts and the tire marks and the loose gravel that occurs because of the ATVs. It becomes dangerous for the gravel bikers who are on that section of the road to try and maneuver because of the loose gravel, and it's only because of the ATV use. So if we start to allow ATVs south of Verona, that's going to be the condition of the road, the trail, from that 5-6 mile section. The last point that I want to make is that it's a wonderful piece of recreation that we have. It's quiet, it's peaceful, friendly, and not that I have anything against ATVers, but they do have a section that they can go to. It's just that we want to keep what we have right now for the dog walkers, for the cyclists, for horseback riders. That's as much as I want to say. Thank you.
Okay, just one question from Judy.
Bell route that you cited, is that part of the pilot project area that's already been established, or is no?
No,
No.
no,
Thank you.
you have to get in your car and go to the trail.
Okay, thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
And we have. Move on to, and then we have to see if we have anyone online who wishes to contribute. Carolyn?
Thank you for allowing me a chance to speak. My name is Carolyn Bonta. I'm a resident of the city of Kingston and an avid cyclist. I bike to work at Frontenac Park, at the Elbow Lake Environmental Education Center. I've ridden up to Battersea. Up until the KMP Trail was created, I never biked up as far as Verona. So my first time was when that trail was there, when all of a sudden I had a safe means to ride up there while avoiding 38. Part of biking that trail, having that resource impressed myself and my husband so much that we purchased property in South Frontenac, 143 acres of woodland up in Piccadilly near the trail. And we now bike there regularly. So we purchased that in 2020. And now from April through to November, on average, we ride up that trail from Kingston once a week. Along the way, we buy our groceries because we stay at our campsite for a few days at a time. We purchase groceries. Sometimes we need to bring supplies. We have the vehicle. We buy gas. We go into town, into Verona and elsewhere for meals. We stop at Gilmore's, sidetrack from the trail. So I just want to point out that, we were recreational cyclists who saw this valuable resource in the area, a safe way of us getting up to an area that we are now taxpayers, we are now voting members, we're active in the community, we participate, there was an issue raised about garbage, we participate in regular pitch-ins, there's actually our neighbor made a YouTube video of what we clean up from trails as well. So we are contributing, and I want to point out, do not underestimate the economic development potential of two cyclists. One question that I have, based on the information package that was shared, so anecdotally, with us, because we're riding up, we're moving fairly slowly on our bicycles. We have panniers which make us a little wider. I was supportive when ATVs were allowed in roads back in 2015. Don't mind them on trails, but over the years, they're getting increasingly larger and larger. So big side by side, there's only so far I can safely pull off. It's become cumbersome to actually get physically off a heavy bicycle, haul it off to the side to allow side by side to go by. It's not pleasant being tailgated by one of these for a kilometer or so before they can get around you where you can safely move over. And then they leave a trail of dust and, you know, squeal of tires to show their frustration. Well, I'm frustrated too. So because of that, we know that ATVs are allowed. They were allowed from Craig Road North. So to get to Piccadilly, we actually find 38 safer. It's paved. I wish the paved shoulders had been wider, but we find it safer and more predictable to ride our bicycles there. Since the pilot was initiated from Verona north to Craig Road, we too stopped cycling there. It's windy, especially around Prince Charles School. We've had a few close calls. Not worth it. I'd rather take up space on the road going slowly through Verona, and cars can just wait behind me. It's not that long, and then continue along my way. So the data that I found were missing from the information package that we were given, there was this pilot in a similar area nearby, but there was no pre and post user data that could be used to compare the impact, to look at the specific impact of allowing ATVs. So the data that were presented prior in terms of use data, lump motorized vehicles together. So someone could not pull out which of these are snowmobiles, which of these are ATVs, what is summer use, what is winter use. We had no data presented from before ATVs were allowed, nothing long-term there. And we had no data afterwards to show how has the use changed. You know, when ATVs came on, has the use of cyclists, pedestrians, horseback riders, cross-country skiers, has that changed? And what has been that percentage change? Has it increased? Has it remained stable? Has it decreased relative to a long-term trend? You know, I don't want someone to say, well, we allowed ATVs on, but pedestrian use has increased by 4% if in the past the rate of change was 15% annually, for example. So I feel like there wasn't data there to look at how ATVs had a similar impact in a similar area. And I recommend that if council's going forward with considering these sort of proposals, we need to gather data in advance to look at user trends to be able to make a proper assessment during a pilot. So along with that, that's one recommendation. Also, it's been pointed out that ATV riders don't feel safe taking 38 down to Harrowsmith. As a cyclist, I've ridden that 3 times. It is a death trap. So without safe access on the trail either, you're really barring cyclists traveling up from the south, from that hill. So I highly recommend to the South Frontenac folks, maybe get those roads fixed up so that users can feel safe. So that those of us riding the trails, walking the trails, can safely get to the resources in these small towns, which, as it's been pointed out, are not along the trails themselves. So I'll fix up the roads, assess the use, see if maybe ATVers feel more comfortable accessing their gas, accessing their pizza from safer roads, and start collecting data in the interim before making a decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Getting mixed signals, somebody said we were fixing too many roads.
Judy?
Okay, thank you very much. And I am more and more curious on the methodology that was used for this pilot study, because when you do a pilot study, usually you have that pre and post information, and I'm anxious as a council member to see that. And I request that formally.
We'll have Richard speak to that.
Yes, I can forward you the previous reports and considerations that the committee looked at in previous councils. So there was survey data that was used as part of that pilot project. We didn't have trail counter program in place at that time. When that decision was made, the trail counters were installed about the same time that the trail was opened up. The more detailed data that Bonta is looking for, if you look in the appendix 4, there's a number of graphs and charts showing monthly use and additional use. Plus, I tend to try to provide the committee and council with regular updates on that use, both on a site-by-site basis and system-wide. So, yes, the table in the report itself is a summary, but there is more details that available, should the committee request it.
Follow-up.
Go ahead, Mike.
And just to follow up to that, the pilot project, was that set up as a 2-year pilot project, 3-year, 4?
The direction given by council was to until the completion of the Verona Housing Master Plan. We have not received a communication or information that program has been completed yet.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, I was going to leave this question to the end, but since the topic was brought up now, are there any comparisons between whether in the county or Ontario or Canada or worldwide between trails sharing motorized ATVs and pedestrians, et cetera, as to the number of casualties, accidents, anything to compare apples to apples?
I'm not aware of those data sets. Many of these trails, many trails, whether they're motorized or non-motorized, are often managed by groups like Friends of the Cataraqui Trail, groups of volunteers that are, passionate about their local trail, and they're not necessarily connected to the larger systems. And there might be some US data that we can find around that.
Okay, any number of, any kind of number of example, accidents or injuries that happened on this pilot section? Anything?
I think one of the things we do have, and I don't know that it's been documented anywhere, but an example is from the boundary of Central Frontenac to the north. We have had multi-use both north and south and east and west for probably 20 years now. And there have been very few accidents. I can't think of when the most recent one was, but basically we have walkers, bicyclers, horseback riders, ATVs, snowmobiles in the winter, along with skiers. And it's worked, I would say, fine at this point for all those years. There may be people who don't walk at certain times of the month, like Saturdays and Sundays. They choose to walk during the week when there's less activity. It's very much a busy summer trail for ATVs.
Okay, is there a possibility from the county as well to get any kind of study about this historically, maybe going past 4, 5, 10 years, to see and determine our position on this? Because this will help, because a lot of the concerns from the public relates to potential hazards, safety, and accidents. This is a primary concern, and if we want to make a judgment, we need to know that it's not just concern, but based on studies or data.
If the committee can request that information as part of its decision-making process after the public meeting's done.
Okay, Brett?
Just regarding information on accidents, usually the OPP will investigate these accidents and they would have a report probably in their database. So maybe it's one place that we could reach out and see if we can get the information from that source.
Okay, now we need to see if there's any, Judy, one more.
In part of my research, I was looking at Stats Canada data 2013 to 2019 on altering vehicle fatalities in particular in Canada. And 61% of the fatalities are for males 35 and over. And that 26% were the 20 to 34-year-old range, 85% were males altogether. And that's not the catastrophic injuries, that's just the straight up fatalities. And of that 51% alcohol and drug related, 33% road conditions, dangerous surface, slope or curve unreported in fatalities. And 33% not wearing a helmet or safely wearing a helmet in the fatalities. So there are stats that can be obtained in that. And it's like injuries in a war, and that fatality is one thing, the morbidity is the other, not the catastrophic.
But this is not between, this is not.
This is not between the motorized and non-motorized,
That's
but it'd be very interesting if the county could investigate and find those staff.
Yeah, Richard said they will, if the committee chooses to defer this decision and get some more statistics, then that would be what we would ask staff to do. Now we need to go. Thank you, Carolyn.
Is there a question from the presenter from the floor?
Not really.
Is that-
It's been allowed because
So this
we're all getting a little weary,
This
but
wouldn't be a precedent.
would it be a quick question?
Okay, a quick question pursuant to the presenter and also the councilor's question is the statistics from the pilot project. Is that material available for public viewing? This was collected in the public. Can we get it online, or can you see that it's available for the public?
So
The pilot project.
So the decision-making process for the pilot project, all of the agendas are available on the same place that the county.
Okay, so on the county website, we'd be able to locate this material.
Yeah, so the process was completed in 2020 and 2021. So there are agendas both of the community advisory committee and county council where this was discussed and considered.
But what about the data?
The survey data, so those reports include the survey data, and anybody from the public can also request more detailed data at any time through the process that's outlined on our website.
Okay.
Your question about the accidents you think along the trail?
Yes.
I would say 90% of them are never reported. I've seen a young kid go off on the ATV in the ditch. Friends come along and pull them out. I've seen my sister break her shoulder bone, trying to go around because ATVs have rutted out around the.
That's the gates.
There's lots of accidents that have happened. You'll never hear about them because people feel. So don't assume that there's been no accidents in those areas that you're going to because nobody believes that.
Okay, all right, Carolyn, thank you. We're going to see if there's anyone online who would like to make a comment. Brianna?
Through your chair, now we ask anyone that's on the Zoom link here to raise your hands and use the raise your hand function if they're looking to speak, and also your first name and your last name. So we'll just wait a moment here and see if anyone does.
And if we don't, I think we need a break. Bathrooms are that way. Doesn't look.
Through your chair, at this time, I'm not seeing any attendees for I have the names.
Are you gonna have the break or can we make our comments?
We can make our comments and then we'll have a break, I think. Okay, Ron?
Okay, all I'm gonna add is I'm not pro or against, believe me. I'm trying to be neutral here, it doesn't matter to me. South Frontenac in their 5-year plan also has creating total sidewalk accessibility in Harrismith, Notre Dame Street, and all those that don't have it. They are gonna have sidewalk up to the park, so that there will be this loop. I always hear about how dangerous Road 38 is. I've had a side-by-side since 19. I've driven 14,000 kilometers. And I have put 500 of that on the trail. I have driven 38 from Charlotte Lake. First Road, I don't care which one it is, and I have never been intimidated. And nor have I had an issue, not once. And that's a lot of kilometers, in my opinion, on the road. I think we've had a lot of concerns here today on both sides. I think we need to explore the security of the Cataraqui Trail, which does not belong to us, but that's what keeps coming up about the Harrismith section. I think we need to look at the option, whether it is Graham Road or it isn't Graham Road, or what we're doing if we don't want to go through the village. And I also would like to see the statistics of what the use is south and north of the road. To see what, I mean, it's easy to say, I see lots of people walking, I see lots of people riding.
But it's a lot better if you actually see those statistics, and I know they have cameras for that, and I know we have had some of those statistics in the past. So I don't think that nobody needs to make a rush decision on this. Those businesses are not gonna close tomorrow because the trail is not open. And I don't think we have to make that decision today. I'd like to see some more information, but I don't like it that when one group wants to go against another group because something is dangerous. The shoulder of the roads are wider than anywhere almost on those main corridors. And I've never been intimidated. I've used it for camping, I've done subdivisions, I've done you name it. And I've never had a close call yet. And so everybody that always comes to me about speed, about everything else, I've driven all those roads and I have not, and I've backed out, I've done whatever. And so I like to look at it as, what are the uses gonna be? Is it compatible? What can we do? Don't pit one group against the other. Let's get the information and see if we can make a informed decision.
Okay, so what I'm hearing then is there won't be a recommendation going to council from today's meeting.
Well, I can make that as a recommendation if you want,
Okay,
but
well,
that's up to the committee.
okay, Mike,
I just want to reiterate what I said at the beginning. Me personally, we're not politicians. We are here as an economic development, and we need to look at this from an economic development point of view. So based on that, the data that we requested, this will help us as well. And also to keep in mind that there are businesses affected and there are people affected as well. The final decision lies with the county council. So in order for me to be, I cannot say I will be neutral. We cannot be neutral in something like this. We need to take a decision whether yes or no. We need more data. We need more information. This is from my perspective. So I echo what John said, and we definitely need to know more.
okay, Fred,
This, I drive around a lot of different communities, and I notice some communities do post that the ATVs are allowed to on the main highways. And they encourage us to share the roads as well. One of the things that puzzled me the most was when this whole concept came about. And when you're putting multi-type vehicles and pedestrians and horses and everything else on one trail, we're gonna have problems occasionally. And hopefully not bad problems, but you know, I really feel that the multi-use trail is a difficult thing for people to navigate. ATVs, unfortunately, they have the most negative impact on the environment. They're harder on the trails. And as a result of that, they get a bad rap because of that. And you're always, no, it doesn't matter who's using what on the trail, what method they're using on the trail, you're gonna always have a percentage of people that are gonna be difficult and are gonna be bad. So, you know, that's just something that happens. But I think we do need more data and before we can make a decision on this.
okay, Judy,
Okay, in summary, some of the things I heard today, and I think very valid, I believe we should have another meeting, and it should be in Harrison, because it's certainly one of the major communities that would be affected. And I am very anxious to see a succinct pilot data, you know, pre-post, et cetera, and that, not just rummaging through decisions being made. I want to see the data, and that I am data driven. I want to see what our insurance liabilities are all the way along that trail. And if there's been any significant claims, et cetera, because one of the things brought up today was a $20 million lawsuit. When I hear everybody talking about $15 million being the cap, who's going to pick up the rest of that? Ecotourism is the fastest growing form of tourism. It's estimated 15% growth rate per year. And aside from that, just looking at it from a statistic, and that being from Frontenac Islands, I've seen it firsthand. And we actually promote it quite strongly in that, you know, go look at the wind turbines, go go cycling, go to, et cetera, and that. So there's lots of money to be made in that, and this is an economic development. So I'm not in favor of protecting horse and buggy in that per se. I'm looking forward to the future, and that is the growth area. I'm very concerned about safety and that, because oops doesn't cut it when you have a life-threatening catastrophic injury, and that is a reality in that, and especially when it's unsupervised. If you get caught on the road and you're 13, 14 years old and doing wheelies, and you have an accident, there's charges, but you're still paralyzed maybe. But if you're on a trail where there's very minimal supervision, whether it's OPP or bylaw, there's a responsibility in that, and it's something to be taken very serious. And on that note, how many bylaw officers do we have, and are they out there, and how many charges have been laid to date? Because the trail wardens aren't capable of laying fines or charges or anything else. There's a positive impact that the OECD, which is the Organization for Economic Development across the world, and they look at environmental tourism as a positive impact on the environment, which I think we should all have a positive impact on the environment at this point in time, but also on the economy. So final piece is that Trail Canada or Trans-Canada Trail funding, and that, which in the clause I understand from the county perspective, if we allow motorized vehicles on, how much are we on the hook that they can demand back from the county? Because in the agreement, they get to demand back every cent that they ever gave us, and I have no idea as a new councillor how much we'd be on the hook for, but I do know that they're going to be helping with a few bridges right now. So that's big money, all for the sake of allowing ATVs that we know does further damage to a trail, that puts an increased risk. Certainly is not environmentally friendly in any way, shape, or form. Maybe we should be looking at electric bicycles too, as what should be looked at. But basically, there's a lot of questions, and I'm all in favor of making sure that we have the safest, environmentally friendly recreational trail. It's not a road, it's a trail. Let's keep it recreational.
Okay, Ron.
I just want to make a comment that the public meeting is today. It's a public meeting. I don't think we're obliged or asked to hold 5 public meetings. The public meeting is today, and anyone and everyone can still comment to the county online about any concerns or everything else that they want to say. I don't think the need is to go to Harris Smith and hear it again. I don't see what the advantage of that would be. I think it's pretty loud and clear what we're hearing, and anybody can comment online, anybody. So I myself personally don't think that we need to do this over again. And I don't want anybody to say that they're not allowing motorized vehicles on the Cataraqui Trail, because that's not true. If you want me to get on electric side by side, does that change it? No, it does not. So let's just not, I don't want to criticize them.
They're not permitted, Mr. Mayor.
I know, but electric bikes are, and they
are,
fly.
they are not permitted on the Cataraqui Trail. They may be used, they are not permitted.
Okay.
Well, they're unloading them at the city of Kingston and driving everywhere with them, so I'm just saying.
I'm happy about it.
I know, so, but I'm just saying, don't say you're not. So anyway.
Wait side by side with an electric bike? Give me a break.
Okay, first of all,
I don't want to get run over at 40 either by a bike.
They'll go for
Yes,
it.
they do.
Yes, they do.
Anyway.
anybody else yelling out, or you can leave. We have been at this for 2.5 hours. We have heard you. We have now have the committee who is discussing this. What I'm hearing is there will be no decision made today. There will be more information provided by the staff, and we will be dealing with this issue again. And it will be on an agenda that you will be able to come to the meeting, or you will be able to be online at the meeting. But as of right this point, we are done this section of the agenda because we have a whole meeting to go. No, I'm sorry.
This is about the.
We
Incident on the trail, June 1st, and an ambulance came. They didn't have access to the trail,
So they had to walk with their equipment down the trail to the accident. Is there any way the committee can look at bettering how the safety people can get there to assist a cyclist, to assist a walker? They have to walk forever. Can that just be considered and looked into?
I'm sure they've heard you, and if there's something we can do, we will. All right.
Just a comment to say that everybody thinks we were voting on this at the next county council meeting.
No.
That's not.
We are not. This issue will be around for a while yet. Okay, I'm going to call a recess. Oh, sorry, Bill, do you want to say something? Jim?
Yeah, I think be right.
Yes. we
Just a couple of additional things for the next meeting, perhaps. I'd like to find out whether or not the Trans-Canada Trail that's being upgraded now, Elk Creek Bridge, is an area that is yellow section. So the reference in the report about the Trans-Canada Trail requiring permission, can we go ahead and find that in advance? Is there any way we can contact them and say, if we do this, that'll be the case? And I don't need that answer today, Richard. I just want that answer at our next meeting, if we could. And that, I have other comments, but that's the main one.
Okay, all right, thank you all for coming. We have heard what you've said. We are listening, and go out and enjoy the beautiful day, whether you're walking, biking, or ATV, or horseback riding. We'll be still doing a whole meeting here for the next couple of hours. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. We are now at the adoption of the agenda. Okay. We'll start with, moved by Ron, seconded by Mike, that the agenda for the July 5th, 2023 meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Advisory Committee be adopted. Any additions to the agenda, Brian? No additions? Carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest in general nature thereof of any item on today's agenda by any member of the committee? Seeing none, we'll note that in the minutes. Adoption of the minutes, moved by Phil and seconded by Leona, that the minutes of the Planning and Economic Development Advisory Committee meeting held May 3rd, 2023 be adopted. Any discussion? Oh, and yeah, okay. All those in favor? Carried. Deputations and presentations, we've had those. Briefings, we've kind of had that too, so we're going to move right on to reports to the Planning Advisory Committee, and it's the Ardagh Lake condominium. And Sonia is going to answer any of our questions. I'm going to read the resolution, and then if we have questions, we can talk about them then. So moved by Jim and seconded by Philip. Be it resolved that the report titled Planning and Economic Development Application for Extension of Draft Plan of Condominium Approval, Ardagh Road Condominium, Township of North Frontenac, file number 10 CD 2012-001 be received, and further that the Council of the County of Frontenac extend the draft approval for the plan of condominium of Ardagh Lake for a period of 2 years to July the 19th, 2025. Questions or comments for Sonia? Ron?
We had another subdivision, I'll say, I'm not gonna mention any names, but in South Frontenac, that we had extended several times. Then county council at the time decided that that was enough. All of those conditions wouldn't have been applicable now, one thing or another, and it was turned down. I thought that was the death of it or the end of it. However, now I'm told that they can still appeal that. That decision doesn't matter. What about this one? I mean, this one's been here a long time. Are those conditions, do they meet what they should meet? Or is it really historic? I know if you put an application in, we have to follow through with it. But even if we decided to say it's pretty ancient and we'd like to turn it down, I don't know if, according to the province or somebody, if that's applicable anymore. Is that fair?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Right, I haven't stood with William. With respect to the specific.
You're gonna have to speak right into the
Okay,
mic.
is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. With respect to the specifics on the file, I would defer to Mr. Gallivan because this predates my time. But in terms of the process, this was only technically approved, like even though the file number was 2012, it was only approved in 2020. So we go from the amount of time that it was approved. Now, since then, there's been the pandemic, which is why we've agreed to a 2-year extension. You're correct, though, in that we are cautious in terms of the amount of approval, like additional time that we give, the number of times that we would allow an extension, simply because policies change, regulations change, studies get outdated. So in this case, we feel that because they've only had the approval for 3 years, it's been difficult because of the pandemic for them to be able to fulfill those conditions, but a 2-year extension is warranted. Probably the conversation I will be having, if this is approved by council with the applicant, is that they do need to act on this because it is something that potentially will not gain further approval down the road. It's really dependent, right? If they come back in 2 years and say, we finished 90%, we need an extra, 6 to 12 months to finish the last 10, then that's fine. But if they come back in 2 years and say, we've only done 10%, so it's very case by case specific. So,
Okay, Judy?
Thank you. Yes, regarding that history piece, it was confusing to me when I was trying to do my research on it. And to me, it looked like 2009, it started planning the Androck Lake Development Inc. And 2014, there's supposed to be 34 condos proposed. And at that time, Mr. Galvin was actually working for a township in that versus a county. So he has a long-standing history with this, but basically, when I started looking at it, it's 14 years at least that things have been percolating. And I was trying to figure out in 2020 in that September, there's an eco view piece of it that it went from 17 lots down to 15 lots at the lake, but still talking about 23 units. And then at one point, it had a for sale for the via the Bahar group, and I couldn't figure out whether this company's been sold or is it the same bloody company that's been going since 2009? And that, if you clarify that.
Through you, Madam Chair, so yeah, I do have quite a bit of history on this file. It's gone through two different owners. So the owner on this file, Ms. Wendy Lewis, was not the original owner who originally started this application many years ago. And went through different iterations. Originally, they wanted to put 40 lots on that property. And became very clear through the process that neither the county or the township was going to support that kind of density. When Ms. Lewis came on, we were able to work better with them, and we had the Ministry of the Environment working with us on making sure that they modeled the lake to make sure that that number of lots was proposed could handle the impact on the lake and it wouldn't cause any damage. So it has a long history, but it only is, and as Ms. Bolton already said, it only really started to progress, and the studies really started to be completed in the last 4 to 5 years. And that's different than the file that Councillor Vanderwall mentioned too, which had 4 different draft approvals over 10 years. This is the first request from this Ardagh Lake development.
Okay. Brett?
Yes,
Yeah, there.
there we go. Yeah, this, I've watched this development for a long time. And it had a lot of local resistance from groups that had some influence, and it had been delayed a long time as well. And
Extension, and we should have that in writing in time for the council meeting on July 9th.
Okay. Jim?
Have they started clearing any of their conditions of draft plan approval that, or are you aware of something?
Through you, Madam Chair, I did ask the applicant to provide me with some specifics, because it is normal for us to detail in our report to you what they have and haven't accomplished, and to date, unfortunately, they have not done any. When they got their approval in October 2020, it was right at the height of the pandemic, and they've had trouble securing funding. So, you know, as I said, I think if they are granted this extension, we will be having a conversation with them about the importance of them showing that they are moving towards clearing those conditions in order to be able to see this project come to its conclusion.
Go ahead, Jim.
Just as a follow-up, in your opinion, is 2 years adequate time to get all that done?
Through you, Madam Chair. So in the past, our practice was to provide only 1 year. It's only been in the last year or so with these requests for extension coming in that we've started, again, on a case-by-case basis, giving some of them 2 years because of the pandemic, because it's been difficult to be able to hire your well drillers and your surveyors and all of the technical expertise. The applicant did ask if we would consider a 3-year extension, and we have not done that before. And again, I think as staff, we just want to be cautious, and we will, because we've never done a 3-year extension. And as was pointed out, studies start to get dated. So we want the applicant to feel some kind of impetus to, like, they need to move forward. So we don't think that a 3-year is appropriate. So we kind of have gone with 2 years. And again, if they come back in 2 years and say we're 90% done, but we need, you know, a bit more time, then that's fine. If they come back in 2 years and they're still at 0%, that's a different conversation. So.
Yes, she basically said, I think 2 years puts some pressure on them, and then if they're actually moving in a positive direction, then you'll know. Instead of 3 years, and then they wait till 2 years and 6 months and say, oh, hold on, we're put the pedal down. I think that's a reasonable compromise.
Okay. Mike and then Judy?
Actually, question to Fred. You mentioned some objections or opposition. Does those objections impact the decision of this committee? Is there anything that you'd like to share with us?
No. And it's just, there was some resistance, in the public.
Through you, Madam Chair, I would just add in response to that, just to be sure that what this committee is being asked is not whether this is still a good development or not, it's whether or not the request for the 2-year extension is appropriate. So we're not revisiting the rationale and the findings of the studies and all those things. It's just in this instance, they've requested an extension. We're proposing 2 years. Is that appropriate?
Judy?
Sorry. I think that it's getting long in the tooth, and actually I would be more inclined to stick to the 1 year to see if there's any progress made within 1 year. They've had a long enough time and they did 0 progress made. If they came back to us in 1 year and said, okay, we can only get these 2 pieces of 34, at least they're moving in the right direction. They've made a financial commitment. But at this point in time, if they can't get that thing off the ground, somebody else may be able to do it. But I don't see wasting another 2 years compared to 1. That's my 2 cents.
It's not costing us to wait that extra year, and it does, in the economic time we're in right now, certainly to get anything done is very expensive and hard to find anybody to do anything. Ron?
I was gonna comment on that. I know at the municipality, even in our municipality, it used to be 1 year to get a lot created, all the paperwork done. Didn't matter what's COVID happened, all of those arguments went out the window. We had to extend everything. I'm not saying that pandemic isn't over, but I don't think that backlog has gone away yet. So on these kind of developments, 2 years has gone before anybody realizes. So if he's gonna move 2 years, I think is pretty appropriate.
Okay, Jim?
Just a comment on that, draft plan approval was issued basically in 2020, correct?
That's correct, October.
Yeah, so this hasn't dragged on. Somebody's been looking at developing the land for a long time. We had a person here earlier today that said his father-in-law looked at developing real property in Harrisburg probably 25 years ago. To see that type of timeline occur is quite normal. What we really have to look at is when was the draft plan approved, and are they realistically moving towards?
Yes.
We're both on the committee when this got reviewed.
There you go, the old voice. Did I say that? All right, we're going to go back to.
Go next to the next report.
Okay. Our report, I don't mind. Our reports are a little messed up here, but we're getting to them. Okay, recommendation. This is moved by Judy and seconded by Fred. Be it resolved that the fan tours to Wolf Island and other areas of Frontenac County be included as part of Economic Development 2024 business plan, subject to available budget and staff time. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, now we're going back to the one that we missed.
Yeah, Brandon is taping it out. I'm gonna read it out for you.
Okay,
He's done a better job of that than me.
Richard had it right, but I don't think Brianna liked it.
No.
Can't believe we've lost the crowd.
Went for pizza. Jumped on their ATVs.
Our meetings are so riveting. I'm not sure why they would have left either.
Yeah.
Through you, Chair, this is the motion that we have on the floor, so that the Planning and Economic Development Advisory Committee defer the decision to extend the ATV use on the KNP Trail south of Verona to Harrison until the committee receives more information from the Manager of Economic Development on the safety, liability, by law enforcement, additional use data, and concerns.
And that's moved by Phil and seconded by Fred. All those in favor? Carried. Oh, sorry, Jim, did you want to say something?
Well, I was gonna make a slight amendment there that we'd also find out what we can on the Trans-Canada Trail situation and see whether or not.
That's a new liabilities for me.
That's under liability.
And under comparables as well.
Yeah. That That will just naturally do that. It doesn't have to all be in a
But
motion.
it's second. She mentioned competitors.
Oh, did you?
She mentioned competitors, yes.
Okay, so what else do we want to add?
That's good.
All right. Okay, all those in favor of the motion as read. Carried. All right. Now, communications, those are number 9. Any question on any of those? Is there
There's
any,
something in there about ATV.
is there any other business to come before this committee today? Being none, next meeting, we don't have a date.
It was a stipulation. Brandon, did we make a decision on the August meeting?
I think we have to take summers off. We don't have a county council meeting. We should not have committee meetings in August unless there's something really pressing.
The next meeting that I have on here is October.
We're skipping
Okay.
September too.
Director Clayton?
Joe has something he wants to
I
start.
had, through you, Madam Chair, I'd asked the clerk's office to canvass she want to hold a meeting in August. I don't know if that's happened yet.
No.
Okay, it would be, it's the week of August 16th. The reason we're requesting that meeting is that, county council will be dealing with the budget and the overall county budget in October, and it's our, we would like to present the planning and economic development budget to this committee first, to go over it with you and to get some kind of comments and endorsement on that before it goes to county council.
So you're suggesting what date, Joe? August?
16.
Is that the Wednesday?
Yes, that would be our regular county
Yes,
council
that's
meeting
it's
date.
in them. And there may be a couple of other items on that agenda as well that we would prefer to have the committee look at before the next county council.
Okay. Are people okay with that? August 16th is a Wednesday?
Yeah, you're saying that it's the same as our regular county council meeting, but we don't usually have one in August?
County council does not meet in
Okay,
August.
so that's why I just wanted
Yeah.
to clarify.
Same
No
date.
problem, but-
Thank you, because the October meeting will be too late for you to review and then.
Yes. Okay. You have to bring the donuts.
Thank you, thank you.
I have to concur with the mayor saying though. The only one meeting in July and August, along with the other 47 that aren't council. There's no such thing as only one meeting in the month of.
Would at that meeting, we might have the reports back that we've requested at this meeting for us?
It's summer and holiday time.
I'm just
probably
asking.
not.
I'm planning to bring it to our initially to our next scheduled meeting, which is October 4th.
And what happened to September?
This committee meets in quarterly unless.
I meant the council meeting. We still have a council meeting in September.
Yes, we do. It's just August because AMO is usually around the same time as county council. So we typically don't meet in August.
Excuse me.
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
2 things. But the August 16 meeting is at 10 a.m. normal.
Yes.
Okay. The second question for Richard, is it possible that a couple of weeks before the October meeting to send us all of these information so that we'll have enough time to study them, not to receive them 2 days before? If possible. Ample time.
Yeah, no, I recognize that there was a lot of information in this report today to consume quickly. The timeline in order to get a good survey out and get the information from the point of direction and getting it to the committee for this meeting was a little tight, but we made it happen. But we will make sure we can provide that information in a more timely manner for your review in advance prior to the next meeting.
Thank you.
Good. All right. If there's no other business and we know our next meeting is August the 16th at 10 a.m. We're going to adjourn this meeting. We'll sit at the township office. Yeah. All right. We'll have lunch. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Hurry your chair, I don't think I'm over it.
I'll move it.
Do we need that?
I'll move it.
See, I have the positions on my page. Moved by Mike, seconded by Leona. Meeting adjourned now. All those in favor? Karen.
Oh, yeah. Yes.